Welcome back, true believers and all you merry Marvelites, to another very interesting video relating to a topic that I thought we have since moved past from ever since the game's main release back in September, as well as I put out my review for the game and try to do a couple live streams of it here and there. But for the most part, after continuously investing hours upon hours within this particular game, with not a whole lot of extra content being added into it as it was previously promised, I personally kind of hopped off from it and moved on to other games that have recently released, like that of Marvel's Spider-Man Miles Morales. But considering that this game is still pretty important to me personally, as well as the developer team and property that it relates to, I figured that I would just take time in this video, kind of have a laid-back discussion with all of you, give you the roundup of all the latest news that has been occurring for it in case you personally haven't been kept up to date with what's happening with this game, and just give you my 2 cents about what exactly is happening. And of course, what game could we be talking about other than that of Marvel's Avengers, developed by Crystal Dynamics, Eidos Montreal, Marvel Games, Nixie Software, and Square Enix, who are the main publishers of the game. But firstly, I just want to say happy belated Thanksgiving and happy belated Black Friday to all of you. If you had a happy Thanksgiving, I'm glad you did. For Black Friday, that is a completely different situation on my part, since if you guys know, I personally do not own a PlayStation 5 yet. I did try to camp out outside my local mall to try and secure one, with no avail. Sadly, it didn't work out for me at all, but that was my first big Black Friday experience occurring for me at all, especially during this global pandemic. So that was a very interesting time. I've stayed completely safe, mask on, don't worry. But sadly, even though I tried, I wasn't able to get a PS5. But still, if you managed to get one or just had a good Black Friday getting some goodies for yourself for this holiday season, kudos to you. I'm very happy for you, and just a very happy Thanksgiving as well. This year has been pretty darn stressful, so being able to just spend time with your family or just take time to relax and enjoy the early holiday season until we start getting into December, I just hope that you had a great time. So that out of the way, let's talk about the main game at hand with Marvel's Avengers. But before we dive into the negative, or at least pretty much really hefty amount of news that has been occurring for this game, I do just want to give a little bit of positives, just some brief positives about this game that might give you a smile on your face, or if you are someone who is a major fan of Marvel's Avengers, might say, you know what, this is actually really nice, because they at least deserve some credit to where it's due, given the developer circumstances of working from home, and the fact that this is a live service game that is trying to incorporate a lot of additional content post-launch, and their current roadmap hasn't been really working out for the best so far, but there is a lot of factors as to why that is. However, the situation that we are going to dive into pretty darn soon isn't that great, to say the least. But to begin, just on the bright side, I personally enjoyed the campaign of Marvel's Avengers. I gave the game a 7 out of 10 based on the multiplayer structure, the war zones, and all that type of post-game content that you get with a game like Marvel's Avengers. But for the main reason as to why us as fans even decided to pay any slight amount of attention to this game in the first place is because of why. The characters. It's Marvel. It's the Avengers, it's Iron Man, Thor, Hulk, Captain America, Black Widow, and the character that I personally was not too fond of at first, but then grew to love a whole lot after playing the story for myself, and that was Kamala Khan, Miss Marvel, played by the wonderful Sandra Saad. And it's very interesting that they decided to promote this AAA, first ever made AAA Avengers game with Kamala Khan as the main protagonist. Now that kind of threw some people off, myself included, considering how we would like to see a AAA Avengers game starring the Avengers as their first outing, but they decided to go a different approach with Kamala Khan as the main protagonist. And because of that, it actually ended up paying off for them in the long run, because recently, in one of these gaming award shows, the main actress who voiced and mocap Kamala Khan, Sandra Saad, actually won for Best Performance, if you believe it or not. And this comes from the Golden Joysticks Awards. The actor who brought to life the spirited Miss Marvel, aka Kamala Khan, in Marvel's Avengers, has won Best Performer in this year's Golden Joystick Awards. We are raising our glass to you, Sandra Saad. So that's very cool. And again, if I had any main reason to you to go out and buy this game, I would say it is for the story. I gave the main game itself a 7, but I gave the story, the campaign of the game, a solid 8. Because had the developers focused on that element of the game more compared to the live service, grinding for gear, looter-shooter aspect, and made something more cinematically driven and character-focused, like that, of course, with Spider-Man PS4, I personally think it would have resonated a whole lot more with fans. Now, you could be a fan of the game yourself and love the Destiny-style elements of gameplay and Anthem-style gameplay loop and looter-shooter elements. That's fine. But based off of the profits that have been seen for Spider-Man PS4, an exclusive PlayStation game only on one platform for the original game, mind you, has recently just sold over 20 million copies worldwide in the span of 2 years, has never been seen before for an exclusive game, let alone a superhero game. And based on the property of how massive the Avengers are, you would surely think they could sell this game without a problem. But if they're focusing on an element that not a lot of gamers are too keen on, then not a lot of people are going to be playing it. Especially if you're promising content down the line and don't deliver said content, that in turn loses the amount of trust from the general player base and consumers that are trying to get interested within this game, especially a game relating to some extremely beloved characters. But regardless, I'm just very happy for Sandra Saw getting recognition as her performance as Kamala Khan. I did think she did a very good job in the story. I think that the overall amount of portrayal that we have seen from Kamala in this game compared to the comics, as well as the upcoming Disney Plus show or movie that's happening in live action that's within the MCU, I really did like her portrayal in this game. I just wish that they had focused it a bit more with a full story campaign instead of the small amount of length that the story actually is. If I were to recommend the game, I would easily recommend it for you to play the story and experience it for yourself to see how you feel about these characters within this newer Marvel universe, even though it does feel like a discount version of the MCU at times, but I do genuinely think that Kamala Khan is a highlight of the story. And alongside of that, for another slight brief update for the game itself, is that there is, in fact, surprisingly, after waiting over 2 months, new content coming for the game. Finally. Because they did confirm a lot. They did confirm quite a lot of content is supposed to be coming in the future for free, by the way. In case you forgot, every single piece of added content is going to be included within Marvel's Avengers at no additional cost. Primarily with the most recent hero announced, of course, being Kate Bishop, who is now confirmed to be coming to Marvel's Avengers on December 8th. Alongside of that, we also have the obvious confirmation of Clint Barton Hawkeye, not Kate Bishop Hawkeye, but Clint Barton, as well as the previous teases and announcements of Black Panther and Spider-Man. Spider-Man, for example, is specifically confirmed to be coming in early 2021. We still don't know the exact dates for Black Panther or Hawkeye or any of the other characters that are most likely going to be occurring within this game down the line, like that of War Machine, Vision, Doctor Strange, and so on, maybe even Scarlet Witch, and a bunch of other Marvel characters within the realm of the Avengers roster known from the comics. But still, if you're someone who is a fan of this game and does want to play more of it, then definitely look forward to December 8th, where they are going to finally include Kate Bishop onto Marvel's Avengers. And of course, if you do own a current gen or next-gen console, you can play the game either or via backwards compatibility or just on the standard console you own now. And they also reconfirmed that the fully next-gen version of Marvel's Avengers is going to release in early 2021. We don't know when, but sometime early next year. So with all that said, that's pretty much as positive as I can be relating to the amount of news that has been surrounding this game. There's more content on the way. The actress who's playing Kamala Khan got an award for her performance, indicating that the story at least does have some merit and credibility to it if you are a lifelong Marvel fan and is truly engaged by the stories known from Marvel Comics. Then hopefully the narrative of this game will intrigue you enough within this universe. So that is as positive as I can possibly be for Marvel's Avengers as of right now. Me personally, I think I said it already, I dipped off the game pretty much after I put out my main review of it and did a couple of live streams. Ever since then, I've just been waiting to see whether or not the new content will at least come out. I haven't reported on any of the news because they've just said it's coming later or we'll have more updates soon without any concrete dates. This is the latest thing that we got, knowing that Kate Bishop is now officially coming on December 8th. But alongside of all of that, Marvel's Avengers is pretty much in a deep dive towards failure. It's really harsh to say that, I know, but based on these recent statistics, you cannot deny that that news is not as factual as you think it sounds. Trust me, I've been trying my very best to be as rational and honest as possible with Marvel's Avengers, giving the developers the benefit of the doubt in certain aspects of its development, but given on everything that's happening right now, I think it might be a bit too little too late to possibly revive and rejuvenate Marvel's Avengers as it stands currently. Now granted, once the new content is included within the game with Kate Bishop, Spider-Man obviously, and Black Panther, that will surely get some people to come back just to play with the new heroes, knowing that it's also free, so you're not paying out of pocket for anything like that unless you spend it on microtransactions. But if you're someone who just wants to hop back in, try in a couple new heroes, see what their story content is like, since they will also include new story content, that will surely bring back some players to just test it out for themselves. But currently, right now, it's been officially confirmed, at least on PC/Steam, that 96% of the player base has dropped off from playing Marvel's Avengers. For a live service game, especially relating to a property as massive as Marvel, I don't think that's ever happened before. At least not in regards to a major property such as this, because we have seen a similar situation with a game known as Anthem, which I previously compared Marvel's Avengers to, as well as Destiny, yet some people seem to get mad with me with that comparison, saying it'll be nothing like those games, when in reality, it's pretty much just that. So I'm just saying, based on those statistics for PC/Steam users, it is crazy to see the amount of drop-off for a character and characters as big as the Avengers to barely have any players coming in to play it because of glitches, because of the lack of content, because of matchmaking not working, because of multiple other factors going into consideration as to why this game has failed. And it's sad to say that for characters and this property as beloved as it is. But the fact of the matter is, if the game wasn't released in such a poor state, or just, structured in the way that it is, it would have probably done a whole lot better. I can guarantee you, if this was structured in a fully single-player campaign-oriented experience, with some slight multiplayer aspects attached to it, it's kind of like 4-player co-op or something like that, in the sense of just a fun multiplayer beat-em-up mode, but not like this live service looter-shooter genre, it would have done a whole lot better. But right now, as it stands, this is honestly one of the biggest drops and failures of Square Enix's gaming history. And it's crazy to say that, because recently, this is confirmed, by the way, in a IGN article coming directly from their website, discussing Marvel's Avengers hasn't recouped its development costs yet. Square Enix sees 7 billion yen loss after lower than expected sales and high marketing costs. Now, this article was actually written on November 25th, and at the time of this recording, it is November 28th, but it is the most recent status update for Marvel's Avengers financially that we have received so far. And as it states, Marvel's Avengers sales have been lower than expected, and the game hasn't yet recouped its development costs, leading to an estimated 7 billion yen, which is approximately $67 million USD, operating loss in Square Enix's HD game segment during the last financial quarter. Company president Yosuke Matsuda explained in a newly translated results briefing, sales of Marvel's Avengers were lower than we had expected, and unable to completely offset the amortization of the game's development costs. Game analyst David Gibson previously explained that the company sold 60% of its planned units, and that the numbers implied that the game cost around $100 million to make. So in short, before we continue on with the article, it basically means that they did not break even, and in fact, they actually lost money when trying to fully develop Marvel's Avengers. And funny enough, this is the same person, Yosuke Matsuda, the president of Square Enix, by the way, who, if you recall, which I did report in one of my previous videos last year or early this year, whenever it was, he stated that he is 110% confident that Marvel's Avengers was going to outperform and outsell both Marvel's Spider-Man and the entirety of the Batman Arkham games. This is not a joke. This is coming from the official president of this publisher company who worked on this game. Now, granted, he was probably at least confident in the game in the same factor that Marvel sells. Avengers Endgame made $3.3 billion in the box office, and based on that hype during that time, a lot of people were very interested in the Avengers game. Because at that time, after Marvel's Avengers Endgame came out, Marvel's Avengers the game was not showcased with its gameplay yet. We were waiting until E3 2019 to see the first official glimpse of the game in action. So with all this mystery, there was a lot of hype and possible speculations as to what the game could turn into. And because of that, I'm assuming he thought that it would get a lot of people interested and excited to play the game for themselves. But again, if the game itself isn't properly developed, or that the genre of the game doesn't appeal to the massive demographic of fans you're trying to market it towards, then therefore it will not sell. And because Spider-Man PS4, games like the Batman Arkham series, are so connected to the character and the story that relates to these iconic heroes, that, at least for me personally, is what drives me to buy this game. That's what drives me to purchase all this artwork, to purchase all these statues, to purchase all these different collector's editions and bundles, because I want to share my support with the game and the developers at work because of how much they genuinely care about the property. Same thing goes for Rocksteady and their Arkham games. Same thing goes with Warner Bros. Montreal and what they're working on with Gotham Knights. But when you start to put a business model in front of a property that is beloved by so many people, which would already sell on its own completely fine without the need of microtransactions or added monetization aspects, that is where you start to lose consumers and people in the general market. And it's a clear factor here, and I hope is taken as a massive lesson of what not to do when trying to make a AAA superhero game based on these iconic characters within a massive franchise such as Marvel. And it's just, really sad to see it do so poorly. No one wanted this game to fail. No one wanted the Avengers to flop and be the massive financial loss that it is. We were all hoping for a great AAA Avengers game that would be on par, if not better, than Marvel's Spider-Man or the Batman Arkham games. But because they sounded, at least Yosuke Matsuda himself, the president, sounded a little bit cocky, or at least not in tune with the general public and the overall market of people that wanted a good AAA standard superhero game that we've received completely fine in the past, if they try to take a different approach with it and try and innovate and do something new, that's fine. But the fact that it came out with glitches, with lots of scummy microtransaction aspects, and that is where the game started to fail almost instantly after its launch, especially with bad word of mouth. That is one aspect that I think you guys need to take care of into consideration, is that reviews from big companies like IGN, GameSpot, they matter, because at least they're, the big market of the general pulse of the community of fans and gamers wanting to know, is this game good or is it garbage? But the biggest factor that I think that you guys may not be aware of is actually word of mouth, coming from normal influencers or content creators or just the general public. Like, oh, I'm going to go and buy that Marvel's Avengers game instead of putting down a pre-order for Cyberpunk 2077, or purchase The Last of Us Part 2, or purchase Final Fantasy VII Remake, or whatever. And if there's like a 10 out of, if there's 7 out of 10 people saying, do not do that, that game is garbage, you should not waste your money at all, go buy something else. For the most part, that person will listen to that main following and take into consideration how their viewpoint could affect the general perception of the game to its main market. That's why the games have done so well for Spider-Man and Batman, because people know, oh my god, this game is fantastic, the story is great, the graphics look fantastic, it runs fine, there's no glitches whatsoever, or if there are any, they're very few and minor in comparison to the massive 1,000 plus bugs that they have reported that were featured in Marvel's Avengers at launch. So it's just one of those crazy situations that have happened for a game like this in the past for live service genres. Destiny and Anthem are key factors of this, but seeing it again be applied here for Marvel's Avengers is just a crazy situation to actually grasp your mind around. But alongside of that, to continue with the article itself, it states, responding to an investor's question on the subject, Yosuke Matsuda clarified that had Avengers not been released in that quarter, the company would have made a profit. that comes down to both development and marketing costs. In addition to the amortization of that game's development costs, explained Matsuda, another significant factor associated with the title was the fact that we undertook a major advertising campaign at the time of its launch to make up for delays in our marketing efforts resulting from the COVID-19 pandemic. There is a certain amount of development costs still to be amortized in 3Q, but we want to recoup it by growing our sales going forward. Matsuda doesn't offer concrete plans, but said the hope is that updates will help drive new sales. We hope to make up for the slow initial sales by offering ample additional content to grow our sales. And as I mentioned previously, you guys, that is the possible slightest positive factor that I can think of right now is once Crystal Dynamics finally starts adding new content into the game, such as Kate Bishop, Hawkeye, Black Panther, and of course Spider-Man, that will surely bring back possibly a fraction of the player base who first started off playing this game on release to come back and see what the updates actually look like and if the game has been polished since its main launch. But as it stands right now, Yosuke Matsuda is clearly trying to save as much face as possible when it comes to this game. In reality, they've lost money, the reviews have been subpar from the majority of mainstream consumers, to say the least, and just in general, saying that COVID actually was a factor on the lack of marketing and way that the game was marketed in such a way has nothing to do with the reality of the situation. That has nothing to do with the amount of sales that the game has made. The game, as we've seen from Naughty Dog with The Last of Us, have had a couple of delays with that game when it was first said it was delayed indefinitely, but then it came out, a couple months later from its main planned release, and it still sold incredibly well. In fact, I believe the sales numbers increased the starting sales for Spider-Man PS4 for The Last of Us Part 2, even after the game was massively leaked from the main public with the ending and the main cutscenes and what happened to Joel and Ellie and their journey and the story, and it still sold incredibly well because people knew what the game was. The biggest problem with Avengers is that no one really knew what this game actually was going to be until late in the year, close to launch. As an example, everyone knew what Naughty Dog was capable of with The Last of Us. It's a sequel to the first game, single-player campaign, main story. There was a multiplayer element in the first game as well with the factions, and I think they are going to do their own standalone thing with that game as well in The Last of Us Part 2. But for the core game, single-player, story-driven, linear, level-based, third-person shooter, totally fine. And the game sold perfect. Spider-Man PS4, open-world superhero AAA game developed by Insomniac Games. It was their first outing with Spider-Man, but the same thing goes for Miles Morales. Everyone knew what Miles Morales was going to be right ever since it was announced because we played the last game. To their benefit, to Square Enix and Crystal Dynamics' benefit, we've never seen a AAA Avengers game before. So they could have gone any direction that they wanted to. But the fact that they barely discussed at all the core factors of the game with the looter-shooter elements, live service portrayal, multiplayer elements, and continuously grinding for loot after you complete the very short campaign was not discussed at all leading up to launch. It was just, we have more content planned, it's great, play with your friends, customize the Avengers in any way you want, but that didn't answer anyone's questions as to what the game truly had in store for the general consumers. And that was a big, big problem. And seeing that now they're paying the price for that is very, very, clear to showcase how they should not approach superhero games, or any game really, in this manner. I just felt the need to discuss about this, you guys. As of right now, if you guys want me to talk more about Avengers down the line in the future with Kate Bishop and the upcoming Future Imperfect content launch with Maestro and Hawkeye and Black Panther and Spider-Man, whenever, let me know in the comments. I would be more than happy to, but as of right now, I'm still doing a bunch of Marvel Spider-Man Miles Morales videos because there's a lot to discuss about that game. We got theories about the sequel, we got more rankings coming up as well, we got collabs with other amazing content creators in the channel coming soon, and the future of that game is looking very, very bright with Insomniac's franchise. I sadly can't say the same for Marvel's Avengers, no matter how much I respect the developers and creators over there at Marvel and Crystal Dynamics, trying their best, especially during the working from home situations and everything they have to do with making a game in general, but still, based on the situation that they put themselves in, I can't really feel all that, torn on the matter, because they did it to themselves. And if they had just handled the marketing a bit better, since live service games are known to improve, down the line. We've seen that obviously with Destiny being the biggest factor. Destiny 2 has a huge player base even a few years later after its main launch. If they had stayed, you know, consistent with the marketing and promotional material and investing players within Marvel's Avengers, even during all this, it wouldn't be doing as bad as it is right now. But seeing that there was a lack of communication with the general market, barely any content at all, same repetitive missions over and over again, with continued lack of promises that don't follow through at all, showcases the clear failure of this game, and I hope it can possibly bounce back. Maybe it will once other heroes are added, but as of right now, it's not really looking too good for this game as a whole. But still, if you're a fan, I'm glad. I know one of my buddies, Carlos, is still a major fan of Marvel's Avengers. He's going to hop on the Kate Bishop DLC right when it comes out on December 8th, but for the most part, we're just waiting for a better product until they actually get their, you know, whole business model together, actually give us promises that do follow through and are truthful to the actual portrayal of the game, and just provide content that will invest players for what they promised for years to come. As of right now, I'm pretty much just replaying Marvel's Spider-Man Miles Morales, trying to get a PS5, going back, you know, with some other fan favorite games of mine, but I haven't really been invested to go back into Marvel's Avengers as of right now. Maybe the new content will change my mind, but as it stands right now, it's not really doing it for me personally, but maybe they could bounce back, fingers crossed. With all that said, everyone, thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this more thorough discussion video. I know I kind of meshed my points in some aspects, but there's a lot of factors. There's a lot of factors to discuss with this news, but for the most part, I do hope that you enjoyed. Leave a like if you did. Subscribe to the channel if you're new for more content like this. It would mean a lot to me. But until next time, everybody, thank you all so much for watching. Stay merry, Marvelites. Let me know your thoughts about Marvel's Avengers in general in the comment section down below. Do you like it? Do you not? And until next time, peace out.